Grüezi miteinander and welcome to the last Swiss Football Podcast World Cup Special 2026. Unfortunately, this is the end of our road. No more of these videos as Switzerland bravely bowed out to Argentina 3-1 after extra time in the quarterfinals of the tournament. It was the most likely result. We all felt that going in, but of course there's a hell of a lot to talk about in this game and how it all went down. So no time for a cold opening today, no time for any of that. We've got too much to talk about. We've got to talk about what happened before the game. We've got to talk about what happened in the game, of course, those huge talking points. And we've got to talk... Sorry. Yeah, I couldn't resist one more of those. But yeah, we've got to talk about what happens now after the game as well. How the Swiss people have reacted, how the Swiss team have reacted and the coaches, but also what this means for Switzerland moving forward. I know there's a lot of emotion attached to this game. I know there's a lot to talk about. I'm going to try and cut through it as much as I can and get through it as quickly as I can and maybe try and focus a little bit more on what Switzerland could have controlled rather than what they couldn't have controlled. And maybe I'm a little bit more suited to doing that, being a little bit more of an Ausländer than most people talking about Swiss football at this time. But as you can see, I finally donned the shirt. It's been hanging up behind me for so long now. But I thought in honour of the performance and the effort of the Swiss boys in that game, it's on for the last podcast. Let's get started. So as always, we'll talk about pre-game. The big question, of course, was whether Johan Manzambi was going to be in the squad. Yakin had made it pretty clear that if he wasn't fit, he wasn't going to be in the team. They weren't going to try and force him in. And I appreciate that. I think that's the right call. I don't think it's ever good when coaches and organisations push players into situations that they're clearly not ready for, especially one so young as Johan Manzambi. He's got a huge career ahead of him. Of course, the news recently broke, only just today, that it looks, for all intents and purposes, that he's off to Aston Villa. 60 plus million euros. So I'm sure Freiburg, despite the fact they're unhappy to be losing him, will be very placated, let's say, by that kind of price, because that is a huge amount of money. Makes him by far and away the most expensive Swiss player of all time. And, hopefully he can live up to those expectations. But after this tournament, I really, really believe that he can. But of course, not in the team, not ready. We didn't really think he was going to be. And the question, of course, then became, how does Murat Yakin respond to that? We spoke about the approach in the first half of the Colombia game, how it didn't quite work, but it was short notice. Now he had a little bit more time to plan it. It was still quite a surprising decision from Yakin. On the whole, the team was basically the same. No Ruben Vargas either. Clearly, he wasn't fit enough to start, even after his heroics at the end of the Colombia game. Djibril Sow comes into the team in place of Ardon Jashari, which he did at the second half in the Colombia game. And you kind of wondered, right, well, does that mean that we're going to go back to the 4-3-3 with the flat midfield three and the three attackers with Rieder back out on the wing? But no, as the game started, it became pretty clear that Dan Ndoye was going to play on the left. Rieder was going to play in the middle, which is where I prefer to see him play, where I think it makes more sense for him to play. And Djibril Sow was going to play out on the right. Slightly strange, definitely not a position where I would have him. And again, you talk about the personnel that were available. Yes, Ruben Vargas was injured, but you do have Noah Okafor there. I know that Yakin hasn't used him. I've even written an article about it for the Square Ball. If you get a chance, you can go find that. There's links on my social media. Obviously, Okafor, just for whatever reason, was never ever going to be an option for Yakin, and you kind of wonder why on earth he even took him, other than to maybe try and rebuild some bridges. But then you worry about going forward if he hasn't used him. I mean, for 19 minutes or something he's played at this tournament now, to have Djibril Sow there, maybe slightly more of a defensive option, but then why play him in that position? But we'll talk about the way that worked in the first half. Otherwise, the team was as you'd expect. Akanji and Alvedi maintained their partnership at centre-back. Dennis Zakaria remains at right-back. Freuler and Xhaka in the middle again, two players who have played just about every minute of this tournament. And of course, Breel Mbolo up front, who we'll talk a little bit about later. So going into the first half, it's business pretty much as you'd expect. What was slightly surprising, given how everybody expected this game to go, whether or not you were a Swiss fan, was that the opening 10 minutes were pretty heavily in Switzerland's favour. Not much in the way of chances, but a lot of the ball, Argentina seemed pretty happy to let Switzerland have control of the ball, and they were using it very, very well in comparison to the Colombia game, which I felt was just a complete mess. The control and kind of clarity and calmness in that first 10 minutes was really impressive. And all of a sudden you think, hey, this is, if Argentina are going to play like this, then we know that Switzerland have some players who can break them down. And again, you're desperate for someone like Johan Manzambi to be there who really, really can make the most of that kind of approach and then that kind of opportunity with the ball. And then, of course, it's all broken down on 10 minutes when Alexis McAllister heads in Lionel Messi's corner. Now, there's a couple of things that I thought here. Number one, this really, really old school mindset of mine is, why have we got no one on the back post? It's standard practice. You have someone on the front post, you have someone on the back post, and if they're there, that doesn't go in. But I know that obviously that modern football has moved away from that a lot. I get it. But you can't help but feel that if you just kind of go in that more Sunday league approach, let's say, someone's there and that ball doesn't go in. It's also probably one of the first times that I can imagine Murat Yakin really, really being unhappy with the way that his players approached the situation. Switzerland have been pretty good from set pieces on the whole. I know that Bosnia scored their one goal from a set piece, but at the end of the game and didn't really matter. And it kind of was just a great shot from a corner that had been cleared to the edge of the area. But McAllister getting up between two Swiss defenders, I think it's Sau and Akanji off the top of my head, I really can't remember. But getting up there, and it's a lovely header, he flicks it in well, but he's essentially unchallenged. No one really follows him and no one really takes responsibility there. So I can imagine Yakin being a little bit unhappy about that, especially so early in the game as well and after such a good start. What really bugged me as well at the time is that I just automatically assumed that Argentina weren't a set-piece team, that wasn't something that they did. I've since gone off and looked, and actually they are the second best team from set pieces in this tournament. They've got 4 or 5 goals, depending on how you determine a set-piece goal in this tournament, compared to 2 in 2022. So it's clearly something they've worked on. And of course, when you've got someone like Messi who can deliver set pieces in the way he can, and free kicks, corners as well, it's always going to be a danger. So it's something you really have to be switched on for. And what's really annoying about that goal is it's at such a point in the game where it then forces Switzerland to press the issue, and it allows Argentina to play in a way that actually they're pretty good at, which is, again, something the Swiss are good at: containment. Just allowing the other team to have the ball, move it around. I think that by the end of the first half, Switzerland have 57% possession, way more passes than Argentina. They're way more in the game. The momentum graph is very, very much in their favour, other than around the time when Argentina score. And yet, XG of about 0.06, 3 shots, no big chances. So it's a lot of the ball, a lot of moving it around, using it pretty well, but not creating anything with it. There's really not much to go in terms of actual opportunities in the game. And Ndoye is industrious, as we've seen from him before. I think I've used that word a million times in making these podcasts with Dan Ndoye and Ruben Vargas. Industrious, but not really able to do anything with the ball when it really matters. Breel Mbolo, pretty poor on the whole when it comes to making things happen. I felt, again, he was very, very isolated in this game. And when the ball did come to him, he wasn't really able to use it in a way that he would probably be happy with. Potentially that comes with the way that Switzerland approached it. We spoke before about Djibril Sow playing on the right-hand side on the wing, but he doesn't really play on the wing. Dennis Zakaria is the one playing on the wing. And as the first half goes on, you start to see Zakaria is more and more the option on the right-hand side. He's pushing way, way further up than, say, Rodriguez is on the left-hand side. And Rodriguez is pushing up a little bit, sure, because Ndoye likes to come inside. And you wonder, well, maybe this is kind of going to be like Colombia, where the wingers are dropping really deep and then we can't really do anything with the ball. But they're not. Sau is pretty high up. He's just more central. He's closer to Rieder. And Ndoye is a little bit further out on the left. But even with Zakaria pushing on down the right-hand side and Sau and Rieder there, there's just not enough. There's too many Argentina shirts. There's too many bodies around them for anything to really work. And then you are crying out for someone like Johan Manzambi. You're crying out for someone who can take the ball and drive it forward into those half spaces. Someone good under pressure. I like Fabian Rieder a lot. I think he's good for set pieces. I think he's pretty good at moving the ball around. he's not the guy you want under pressure in tight spaces. He's not good at turning. He's not good at kind of, releasing the ball at the right time to put people through. And Doy is good at that. Maybe it would have made more sense to have Dan Doy in the middle and Reader out on the left. But these are little things. These are hypotheticals that may have worked and may not have worked. It's just me hypothesizing. Ultimately, it doesn't work. And Argentina are pretty comfortable on the whole. Switzerland aren't really bothering them so much. I'm not really even sure if Emi Martinez makes a save in that first half. I'd have to go back and watch it again, but I don't think he does. Annoyingly, then, the first half kind of ends with a little bit of frustration, I suppose, on the part of the Swiss, summed up in Breel Mbolo's ridiculously stupid tackle on about 42 minutes, where he just completely takes out Paredes, I believe it is. No particular reason. Ball heading towards the halfway line, or just over the halfway line, just runs back from his position and absolutely wipes him out. It's a Stonewall yellow card towards the end of the first half. And again, you probably just imagine Murat Yakin being like, what are you doing? Like, how are you putting us in a position where now you're our, pretty much only top level striking option? You're now on a yellow and putting yourself under needless pressure when we need you to be disciplined. Games like this, where the chances are going to be few and far in between, you've got to be disciplined. You have to be calm. You can't be throwing yourself around like that at the end of the first half. I can kind of understand in the second half when you're knackered and you've been running around for absolutely ages and you just lose it. But it's a ridiculous tackle to end the half. And Switzerland going 1-0 down, and you kind of wondering, I'm really not quite sure this is going to work out, especially when you've woken up at 2:55 a.m. For a 3 a.m. kickoff. After, I will add, getting a little nap in before the England game, which also ran to extra time. So I've only had about, 55 minutes sleep by this point. And I am starting to question my life choices, especially with 2 young kids in the house, that I'm currently sat in my bedroom watching this game on my laptop and wondering, what am I doing here? But, as the Swiss did, I soldiered on into the second half. Now, if there's one thing Switzerland have done quite a lot in this tournament, it started the second half strong, and they do it again. There's a great chance for Dan and Doy a couple of minutes after the second half starts. Now, it's called for offside in the end, and he misses the chance anyway, but realistically, God, man, you've got to be putting that in the net. I think it was probably offside. I don't think it would have been reversed if the goal had gone in, but just for pure routine, just for getting used to the idea of putting it in the net, put it in. It's so indicative of Ndoye's tournament, and he's had a good one. I will say he's had a good tournament. I'm not going to sit here and say Dan Ndoye hasn't played well. He really, really has. But man, has he been wasteful at times. And it was just another example of really, really good build-up play, really good hard work to get there, and then not finishing. And in games like this, where, as we said, the chances are going to be few and far between, you have to take them when they come. There's more good work a few minutes later, and all of a sudden, momentum starts to shift. Switzerland start to grow and grow into the game. All of a sudden, the opportunities are coming, and man, are Switzerland pushing high. Basically saying, look, if Argentina are going to play like this, then let's call their bluff. Akanji is constantly up and around the box. Rodriguez is up on the left. Zakaria is still up on the right. Reeder's pushing further forward, and Doy's coming inside more and more. And the chances start to come. Martinez makes a great save, I think, on about 65 minutes. Then Xhaka has a good effort from distance, which he deals well with, but it's a good shot. And if it's spilled, you see it in the England-Norway game, keeper spilling the shot, and Belgium as well against Spain with Mikel Merino. I kind of wish that Switzerland had taken a few more long shots in this game just to see if Martinez was able to deal with them. In general, he does, but you never know what could happen if you put those efforts in. And then it comes. Rodriguez on the left, great slide ball through that kind of gap in the defence. And then Doy, I was annoyed at him earlier. This time he does the job. It's such a nice finish. Turning his body inside of the right foot into the bottom corner past Martinez. And all that momentum pays off. And Switzerland are back in the game. All of a sudden Argentina are panicking because they've applied this really defensive containment approach for the whole game so far, and it hasn't worked. Switzerland have broken it down. And what's more, once the game kicks off again, it keeps going. Switzerland keep pushing. You can see that Yakin's just allowing them to continue. Don't slow down. Don't settle back and look for extra time. Let's go force the issue. They're so used to playing defensively and containing. Let's keep pushing them. And you can see on the momentum graph, it's not just that the goal goes in and everything goes back to Argentina. It's still there. The bars are still there for Switzerland. And then the red card. Now, this is where I'm going to take some time, because this is undoubtedly where the game changes. Switzerland are in such an upswing at this point. The momentum is all with them. And then Breel Embolo, for whatever reason, decides to throw himself down to the ground to win a free kick out near the touchline. If you think you can win a penalty, okay. It's not my favourite thing about football. Don't like seeing my own players do it. Switzerland have done it a couple of times. I've called them out. Manzambi did it early in the tournament. I don't like it. I know it's part of the game. I know the players do it. If you're going to get something concrete out of it, like a penalty, I understand. But to do it on a yellow card so blatantly for such a kind of in-between opportunity, I get it. You can swing in a good free kick from there, I suppose, but it's going to take a really hell of a delivery and a great meeting of a header to get something past Martinez from that position. Now, when VAR got involved and the ref pulled out the yellow for Embolo, obviously my initial reaction was, what on earth is going on here? I've never ever seen this. I've never ever seen VAR get involved like this before. I couldn't wrap my head around what on earth was going on. And I immediately kind of went to group chats and social media and started asking around, like, what, does anybody have any kind of inkling as to, like, is there precedent here? And of course there is. This happened in the Paraguay-USA game. I think it's Miguel Almiron dives at one point, an American player is booked for it, and VAR comes in, reverses the call, and the yellow is given to Almiron. This is where I started to realise what had happened. The problem is the referee has booked Paredes for the challenge. Because he's booked Paredes, that means VAR then can look at it. And because the yellow card has been given, it has to then be given to the player who has simulated contact. So, look, I know that there is this big Argentina controversy, Argentina, FIFA are trying to get Messi back into the final, blah, blah, blah. I get it. We saw it in the Egypt game as well. And I said in the previous pod, I don't see it. I get that people are going to think, well, they're being given fortuitous decisions. Messi has a potential red card that isn't given earlier in the tournament. The foul ahead of the Egypt second goal is a bit weak, but then Egypt score a second goal anyway, and then concede 3 goals that they shouldn't have conceded. They were 2-0 up. You don't need to then concede 3 goals in the space of 15 minutes. Like, you can defend and stop that from happening. It's a similar thing here. I get that people are going to, because I was the same. I was so confused, and the only thing my brain switched to was this has got to be unfair. There can't be a reason behind this. There's got to be the referee just being openly corrupt, right? No. If you want one slight inkling of conspiracy theory, you could argue that maybe, just maybe, the referee sees Embolo dive, knows that he can't really give a second yellow card because it's so inconsequential, like it's just a random foul off towards the sideline. And then he thinks, well, I'll book Paredes for it. Because I know he's dived, I can give the yellow to Embolo. And it's all fine. That's a reach for me. In real time, I thought it was a foul. You could ask that question, why is it then now that the referee, after so many fouls, after so many little bits and pieces and so many little trips and kicks and what have you, why is it this point now that Paredes gets the yellow card? But it's kind of understandable. It looks like a pretty bad challenge. It's a pretty weak yellow, I suppose, so you could make that argument. But I really, really don't think that the referee is so switched on and tuned into this whole conspiracy that he knows that Embolo has dived and gives a kind of weak yellow card so he can reverse it and give the yellow. I don't think that's the case. I think, unfortunately, you have to put this on Breel Embolo and say, man, what are you thinking? When you're on a yellow card already and you're in such a position where it really, really isn't that fortuitous for Switzerland to get a free kick, why are you throwing yourself to the ground like that? Why are you putting VAR in the position to come in and reverse the decision? It's harsh. It feels really, and it's not my style to kind of pin blame on a player, But unfortunately, in this situation, I can't see any other way but doing it. It has to be on him, and he has to go away. And I think part of the reason he was so upset was because I think deep down he knows that he's made a huge mistake. I don't know what he was thinking in the moment. And I get that playing competitive football, you're going to do stuff that doesn't make sense in the time. You're just acting on adrenaline, so you're just doing what you think is the best. But it's just such a poor call, especially considering his previous foul and the fact that he's then kind of been, barking at the referee a lot ever since that point as well. He just puts himself in a position where the referee is able to make that call and VAR are able to come in and change it. Do I think it's a conspiracy? No. Do I think it's a bit weak and a bit soft and it kind of ruins the game? Yeah. Which is kind of what the Swiss players have been saying afterwards. I know Xhaka came out and said that, he kind of gets it, but he feels that it's kind of ruining the game. And Embolo kind of said the same thing. He didn't really take the responsibility that I felt he should have done, because he never really references the fact that it all starts because he dives. But he talks about how, this is like, it's kind of against the spirit of the game to get involved in things like this with VAR. And I do agree with that, because ultimately I hate VAR. I despise it. I want it out of the game. I don't want it calling these things and getting involved on this level. And I know I'm saying that because it didn't work out for Switzerland in this example, but my track record is pretty clear. I don't like this technology. I feel like it makes the game worse, even though sometimes it makes sure that the right thing happens, that the right decision is made. And I'm not saying that the second yellow was the right decision in this sense, but over time, I do think it gets a lot of calls correct. It just doesn't feel like the football that we grew up with. It's too robotic and clinical, and I feel like it removes responsibility from the referees. When we've seen it in England, for example, in English football, it tends to be pointed at the referees that they are just allowing VAR to ref the game. They're not really utilising their own skill. And that's part of the game. The referee is part of the game. They get things wrong. Part of the game is the players reacting to that and having to pull themselves up when things don't go the way that it should have gone. I know that too much money and too much time has been invested in VAR for it ever to be taken away, but ultimately that would be my wish. Take it away. Get rid of it. I'm sick of not celebrating goals because I'm waiting to see if VAR get involved. I'm sick of being completely confused by why VAR is checking something or what they're looking at, or whether the line that the automatic offside machine is drawing is actually the right line that we all saw because it doesn't look quite right, and things like that. But ultimately, as much as I dislike VAR, this is on Breel Embolo, I'm afraid. And, he has to kind of pick himself up from this and move on, as do the entire Swiss team, because this is where the game changes. This is the huge changing point in the game. And from this point onwards, it's just backs to the wall. It's just getting through to extra time, hoping that some way you can get through to penalties. Right at the end of the game, you've got an incredible block from Nico Elvedi. You can go back, watch my previous pod about how well I thought Elvedi did against Colombia. And I think he's had a really, really underrated tournament, to be completely honest. I think he's been really, really good. And that block to stop McAllister from winning it right at the end, absolutely brilliant. Great save from Gregor Kobel at the end, from Tagliafico as well from the corner. Almost another set-piece goal, but he gets down, goes through about 3 or 4 people, and he pushes it off to the side. What a tournament he's had as well. We spoke again last time about how good Gregor Kobel has been. And then extra time is just surviving. It's just getting through as Argentina come more and more and more. And then Julian Alvarez scores a ridiculous goal. It's no one can do anything about it. It's a great finish. The kind of goal you dream about scoring in a World Cup for your country. Fair play. And then the third goal, it's just a breakaway. Switzerland are pushing. It doesn't mean anything. 3-1 is not a fair representation of the game. Switzerland don't deserve to have lost 3-1 in this game. But it is what it is. It's nothing to focus on too much. A breakaway goal at the end of a game as you're trying to desperately stay in the World Cup. And yeah, now I've depressed myself talking about that. Let's try and put a little bit more of a positive spin on this. Because look, I think most Swiss fans going into this game didn't expect them to come through. I know that there was a real, genuine passion and belief in those players from the people of Switzerland. I saw it with my own eyes, the amount of people at the public watch-alongs at 3 a.m. at, stadiums and pub beer gardens and Lidos and Bardies all over the place. They were all there hoping for that miracle, hoping that maybe, just maybe the Swiss team could do it. And you know what's ridiculous is I really, really think that without that red card, it could have happened. I'm not saying it would have happened. Argentina could have taken control of the game. They could have exposed the weaknesses in the Swiss backline, driven through the midfield, which has not got the legs that it used to, for example. Kobel might have had a great tournament, but he's not going to stop every single shot. And you know what they can do. You look at Julian Alvarez scoring that goal, and you know the kind of quality that they have. But that momentum at the time, just the way that the game felt after that Dan and Doy goal and the way that it had been building up before that, you just felt that goal was coming. You just knew that at some point Switzerland were going to put it in the net. And then how were Argentina going to respond? Well, after the goal, not well. They're a bit all over the shop. And with a few more minutes, with a few more opportunities, with a calmer head, Switzerland could get a second. And then who knows? But it's that red card that just changes everything. And I just, there'll be players in there that just want that game back and just think, God, if we could just take that away and carry on to see what could have happened. And I'm definitely in that mindset now. I'd have loved to see a genuinely full strength Switzerland keep going in that game to see what could have happened, because I really, really think that it could have worked against all odds, of course. But what the Swiss can take from this, the team, the coaching staff, all of the staff around them, and I got to say, I've really, really enjoyed following Switzerland in this tournament. Not just because I kind of care deeply about the football here, but because I like the players. I think it's a great group of professionals, but also of people. The staff around them, the social media has been absolutely fantastic. I've got such a lot of time and respect for Murat Yakin as a coach and as a person as well. I was a little bit unsure about him coming in as the Swiss coach when it happened, but I genuinely hold my hands up and say he was clearly a great choice. And I hope he continues after this. I hope he continues to take the Swiss team forward, because there's some great young players coming through in Swiss football, and hopefully he can be the one who continues to bring them into the team. I think Switzerland have to take so much pride from this and so much positivity of making that first quarter-final for such a long time. The semi-finals of the World Cup are an incredible ask. You look at the teams that are in there. Those four sides are behemoths, on the international stage with just ridiculous amounts of quality throughout their squad. So for Switzerland to even be in that conversation on such a consistent level, to always be there or thereabouts, and to keep progressing is just so impressive and deserves such credit. There is so much potential in the Swiss game. For such a generally relatively small country to continuously produce this level of talent, which I think is only getting better. 60 million euros for Manzambi to Aston Villa. And there are other players coming through who, all right, maybe they're not as good as he is, but that's a high ceiling to compare yourself to. There are a lot of talented young players either in the Swiss league or already out there in academies in Germany, in France, in Italy. And they will be there at that next World Cup. And I expect Switzerland to be there. And I'm genuinely really, really excited to see what they do now in the Euros coming up, but the World Cup in 2030 as well. I think what we take from this is it feels really hard. It feels unfair. It feels tough. But Switzerland, maybe more than any other country at this World Cup, Norway maybe, can take the positivity away from this. And is it not so much better to leave a tournament feeling hard done by, feeling that you could and maybe should have gotten more out of what seemed almost an impossible game against the world champions, rather than leaving the tournament having been battered and humbled and told to go home? I think it's way better, the former. And I think that Switzerland can take so much away from this World Cup and take it forward with them. And that's where we'll leave it. It's been a lot of fun putting these together. Hopefully I'll do more in the future. Please keep your eyes out for the Swiss Football Podcast. I'm going to try and get everything up and running for the start of the new Swiss football season. Can't wait. This has just made me even more excited to get back into it. So I'll see you all then. Ade. Thanks for watching.